Hello friends, welcome back to Halfway to Healing. I'm Sharna.
And I'm Sam, and today we're talking about therapy. The good, the bad, the breakthroughs, the awkward silences.
We both have very different experiences with therapy. What worked for one of us didn't necessarily work for the other. And that's the point of today's episode. Therapy isn't a one-size-fits-all fix.
From mismatched therapists and trying new approaches to finally finding the right kind of support, we're unpacking the messiness and magic of therapy and reminding you that it is okay if your journey does not look like anyone else's.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
my goodness. So when would you say you had your first experience with therapy or like a therapist?
So I started seeing the school counselor on a regular basis when I was probably about 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Now I went to a very fancy private school who had proper psychologists as our school counselors. Like they weren't just counselors; they were credited psychologists. That you could just see. I don't know.
Going from a public school, coming from a public school, being like, what?
So, and that was for like bullying and things like that, and like learning social, like I was trying to learn how to socialize. I didn't know I was autistic and that was going to probably require a lot more than just the school counselor, to help me out. But my first like proper remembrance, that's a word?
Yeah.
Memory, I guess, of like proper therapy was when I was about 14. That was like someone that I was seeing outside of the school. So I had snuck out of my house in the middle of the night, gotten really drunk and really wasted at 14.
Oh my gosh.
And the hospital, because I ended up in the hospital, was like, they need help. Like they need proper professional help. And so I've been seeing doing therapy and seeing some kind of professional help from about then. I got like a mental health care plan at, maybe it was even 13, but I was quite young, and started seeing different people. Again, as always, we'll keep a lot of these places anonymous, just for privacy reasons. But that was like my first experience with therapy.
Wow.
Was when I was about 13 or 14, and kind of unspewing, not very successfully, the life that I had kind of created for myself at that point. What about you? What was like your first experience?
So I did not have psychologists and psychiatrists at my school. I did not
Okay, we didn't have psychiatrists. We weren't that fancy. Gosh, Sharna.
I just went to standard public school, although it was a very strict public school, almost in the sense that you'd think it was a private school, but it was a public school. Like, everything was so strict. But I would probably say around, initially the same as you, 8 or 9, I don't know, I'll backtrack a bit. When I was living in Melbourne, and I think I've talked about this in previous episodes, I was very confident, quite extroverted, had a whole lot of friends, and I'd stay at their houses, hang out with my friends, do sleepovers and stuff. And then when we moved to Melbourne, that confidence when we moved to Queensland, that confidence sort of went down a bit, as I've previously mentioned. And I started getting, when I would go to friends' houses for sleepovers and stuff, I would be fine the whole time. But as soon as it was time to go to bed and sleep, I would just break down. I would get it would just be terrible. And I think maybe I remember one time very specifically in Melbourne where I was staying over at a friend's house and I was very, very sick. I was vomiting and stuff. And I was like, I want to go home. I want my mum. But I think this friend's mum was just like, nah, you're okay. And so I think that's so I ended up staying there. And I think that I guess, triggered the homesickness, I guess.
Yeah.
And so when I was about 8 or 9, I had this homesickness, per se, as soon as we would go to bed. And I remember one night I was at my friend's house, and it was like midnight, and I came out of the bedroom and went to like the landline to call my mum, and then I turned around. So I was like crying because like my mum didn't answer because she'd been out somewhere, and I knew she was getting home at around midnight. And I turn around, and the friend's mum's just like standing right there, and I'm like, I want to go home. And so that had always been a bit of an issue since moving up to Queensland. And when I was about 8 or 9, I had a school camp coming up. That was, I think it was 2 nights. But I did see a child psychologist for not even like enough to get like a care plan, just for like a few sessions to sort of talk about a few strategies and stuff. And then, I don't know, I was quite young, so, 8, 9. And I did still struggle on those like school camps, obviously. And then I saw the same child psychologist again about 2 or 3 years later when I was in year 7 for grade 7 camp, because that was a whole week, so 4 nights. So that was my first.
Were you sort of like, because for me, I was just kind of that my parents were like, you're going, you do not have a choice in this matter. Was it very much similar for you? Were you just kind of thrown in, or was it like an inkling of like, no, I really want to get help here?
Well, I think probably my parents were like, okay, let's try this. Or maybe even it might have been the GP or something, because the psychologist worked at the GP clinic.
Right.
So it was all sort of in one. So I think like the GP, because when I was that age, my parents would come in with me to the GP. Yeah. And the GP would be like, what's wrong? And I don't know if you ever did this, but the GP's like, so what's wrong? And then you look at your mum, you're like, can
you just share what the heck is going on here? Because I'm not going to say anything.
You'd go like, what's wrong? And I'd go, what's wrong? So, yeah, I think sort of the GP and mum sort of like.
When was like the first time you wanted to see, like you specifically was like, I really want to see a psychologist and get help? Because I feel like they're very different situations.
Yeah, I would say, so I didn't see a psychologist or psychiatrist or anything from that small few sessions I had in year 7 for this camp, right up until it was around COVID time. Yeah. So early 2020, which was when I was diagnosed with my eating disorder. And so, I don't know, it's kind of interesting because part of me did want to seek that help, but then another part of me was sort of like pushed into it. Like I remember one day my mum coming to me, I was trying to do some uni, and my mum's like, you're not well, you look really ill, something's going on. And I just sort of like broke down. And
I got what you meant.
Burst down. I just sort of broke down and was like, yeah, stuff's not going well. And then she was like, okay, we're going to a GP tomorrow. And so we did that. And so I was willing but sort of hesitant as well. And so when I saw the GP, I don't know for you, but when I saw the GP and they weighed me, which is, I still hated how like they like weigh people for eating disorders and stuff. Yeah. And yeah, she's like, okay, I'm diagnosing you with anorexia. Like literally on the spot, she's like, okay, bing bong.
Bing bong.
Bing bong. And she's like, okay, let's get some support systems in, because getting like mental health support takes so long. And it was during lockdown as well. Yeah. So she's like, okay, let's get a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a dietitian. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so it was quite overwhelming, but it still took about, it still took about 6 months waiting until I saw the psychologist. Getting into the dietitian was a bit quicker.
Lots of dietitians.
Yeah. And my GP wanted like an eating disorder specialist psychologist. And so, wait lists for psychologists are insane anyway. And then you add a specialist psychologist on top of that. And so I was still, I guess, doing these behaviors and engaging in these thoughts and stuff for like 6 months until I saw a psychologist. And I guess the dietitian did help a little bit. They're like, okay, XYZ, but that was more on the eating side of things. So I guess to answer the original question, bit of both.
Yeah.
I think, because I did have other things going on that I did want to discuss, like, the self-harm and depression and stuff that still benefited from seeing a psychologist, even if it wasn't necessarily an eating disorder one, but that was all sort of tied in with it. Around, how old would I have been? About 18 is when I first sort of started seeing one sort of on my terms.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a bit of a story, and hopefully it doesn't scare our listeners off. So as I said, when I was 14, I was just kind of put into therapy, and the first session that I'd ever had with this psychologist, this was a proper psychologist, no affiliation to anyone. And also why I was like, we'll keep everyone anonymous here. But this psychologist said to me, and I remember it like it happened yesterday, you are too broken to be fixed. Like, dead set to my face. I walked out of that session like early crying, and said to my face, you're too broken to be fixed, which at 14 was, who says that to anyone, let alone a 14-year-old with a very clear addiction issues. And so I walked out and I was sobbing. So that was my first ever experience with someone other than a school counselor. So I wasn't really, I was in therapy up until, well, I'm still in therapy. Like, I've been in therapy for 11 years now. But every time I went to see a psychologist, or because I saw so many different people in that thing, and we did make a formal complaint to the practice that we were at and be like, well, my mum did anyway, like, you can't talk to kids this way, because it was like specifically for children, like it was a children's
like a
space.
child psychologist.
But I continued to go, and I remember, but I very much had like this reluctance. I was like, and this belief that I was like, no one can fix me, like this is I'm too far gone. And I still hold on to that today, like even in talking to my psychologist now. But there was this moment that I went through an ordeal when I was 15, like about a year later, that very much traumatized me. And I remember the lead out after that, because it went on for basically my entire grade 10. I remember I was supposed to go to Argentina in 2016. I was supposed to go to Argentina, and I was having these awful nightmares. Like I could not sleep, and I was really paranoid, and I was like, you know, I was really, really worried that there was people outside my window watching me at night, and I couldn't sleep, and then I'd have nightmares about it. And it was the first time I'd ever gone to my GP alone, because I didn't want to tell my parents. I didn't want to be like, and have them worried either that, one, I was right and that people were watching the house, or B, like that I was going to get kind of shipped off to the mental, to the psych ward, because I was just not doing well. And so I organized the GP appointment, because I was like, this is not normal. Like, it is not normal to be this afraid to go to sleep. And when I've got to go to another country in a couple months, what am I going to do when I'm in another country dealing with all of this? Because I was having like up to, 9 or 10 like proper panic attacks a day. It was really impacting my ability to function. I was like, I'm not coping. And so I went to my GP and I was like, look, I've got to go to another country. I really need help. And I didn't necessarily want therapeutic help, because I had this belief that the psychologist, if I told, even though there's confidentiality, being a minor, I was like, if I tell the psychologist anything, they'll tell my parents and I'll get in trouble, or whatever the fears of a teenager are. And so I went to my GP, and that's the first time I remember like properly asking for help for my mental health, where I was like, I really need help. Unfortunately, because we didn't know what we know now, that I've got bipolar, it ended up being more harmful, and I went to Argentina, and that was a whole thing.
Yeah.
And I got into quite a lot of trouble because that was my first proper manic episode as well. It was in Argentina. So the first time I remember like really going back and asking for help was probably when I was 18 as well. And it was probably because I didn't have this fear, maybe even 19, when I was running around like a crazy person throwing chairs around coffee shops. Oh, mania is so much fun. I say sarcastically if you didn't get the tone, if my listeners didn't get the tone of my voice. But it wasn't until I was like a proper adult that I was really asking for help and really starting to open up about what was really going on inside my head. And a lot of that is because I had all these beliefs. One, that I was too sick for help and worthy of care. Two, that, you know, my parents would find out what was going on, and that was the most terrifying thing that I could possibly imagine was, you know, but I was really scared of therapy, and it caused a lot of, and there was the child psychology clinic that I was at caused a lot of problems for me, because I was seeing a psychiatrist there as well, and then they billed me wrong on Medicare, and so it was a big mess. And yeah, but I was really scared of therapy, and it wasn't even until like the last year that I finally started opening up with my current psych, who I've been seeing for 5 years, about actually, like, she didn't know that I was an alcoholic until like literally in the last year. And because I just don't open up to people about a lot of things. And so it's really interesting that both of us didn't really, you know, feel like asking for help until we were adults.
Yeah.
And I wonder if for you, like, I know for me it's a lot about that control over what's said and control over letting people into my life. Is that something similar for you? Like, did you have any like beliefs or anything as a kid, having gone to therapy but not really wanting to be there?
Sorry, I just completely blanked. Can you say that again?
I just was asking, like, what do you think it was that caused this waiting till you were an adult before wanting to ask for help? Or was it the severity of your eating disorder, or like what?
Yeah, I think probably, like, I don't know, eating disorders are really, I'm going to say in quotation marks, fun, because
oh yeah.
And so part of me didn't want to see a psychologist, and, you know, didn't want to like get better, like part of that eating disorder mindset. And so I think it was part of that, I guess, severity and like physical symptoms that people could start seeing in my body from my eating disorder. And I remember we have some family friends, and every time we'd see them, they'd be like, "Oh, Sharna, you keep," how do I say this in the right words? You keep like your body is changing.
Yeah.
They could notice, whereas my family didn't quite notice as much because they were seeing me every day.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting that you mentioned when you saw that psychologist that they were like, "You're too broken," because when I saw my first psychologist when I was like 18, well, not my first psychologist, but
I get what you mean.
I first saw that first one when I was 18, sort of like willingly, I was talking to the psychologist for a bit, and Mum was actually in the room with me because, you know, I hadn't seen one since I was, 11, 12. And also I'm quite, I don't want to say innocent, but I kind of am. A
little bit, Sharna.
Most of the time I don't get like adult jokes that you'll often make. And so,
I don't know how, like fucking every 5 seconds.
Yeah, literally. And so Mum came in with me that first appointment. So the psychologist could talk to both Mum and I. And then I left the room and she talked to Mum for a bit. And almost sort of like how you were saying, she didn't say, spoiler alert, it was a female psychologist. When you saw your psychologist and they were like, "You're too broken," this psychologist said to Mum, they were like, "How did you not notice? How did you not see this happening right in front of you?" And Mum was like, what do you mean? I just almost like attacking Mum, being like, "You are the problem. How did you not see this? Why didn't you intervene earlier?" But like, eating disorders are so sneaky and secretive. And also, I saw mum every day. I still live at home. So
Yeah.
I feel like when someone is, I guess, trapped in their eating disorder and they are physically changing, you don't see it as clearly.
It's not as
obvious. Whereas if you're someone who only sees this person once a month or something, you're going to obviously notice these changes in a person's body. And so, I don't know if that answered the original question.
No, that answers it really well. And I think, like, I had my eating disorder for about 15 years before I was in treatment.
Wow.
And as far as I know, my family didn't notice what was going on because it was such a big portion of my life that it's like, Sam's always been weird with food. So, I'm not saying that's necessarily your situation, but I just want to make it really clear that if anyone's loved ones are listening, their eating disorders are so sneaky, you will do, at least I did anything I possibly could to keep it under wraps.
Same.
So it's an awful thing to say. And I think, that and you mismatch. I mean, I know you've talked about this before. You had 4 psychologists before you found your current one?
Oh gosh. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 or 4.
3 or 4, yeah. Because sometimes you do get harmful advice. Either loved ones get harmful advice, I got harmful advice. Sometimes they're mismatched. I remember the psychologist that I saw when I was 17, 18, once I left school. I was actually a really good fit for me. He was a really good one. He actually picked up on the bipolar because he was like, you only see me like every 3 months and then you kind of disappear for a bit and then I get a random text message from you. Like, what's up with that? And I was like, I feel really good in those months. I don't need to see a psychologist. And so he was the first one to say, and unfortunately he moved away to a OCD clinic. And because I don't have OCD, I couldn't follow, because he became a specialized therapist, specialized psychologist. But sometimes you just don't fit. You're not going to get along with everyone. And I think I said this in another episode about how we should have like a 30-minute discovery call with psychologists just to figure out if you match with them. But what do you reckon is something that really helped you feel seen by your current psychologist? Like something that really helped you know that it was a good fit?
Gosh.
I'm assuming that it is a good fit because you're still seeing them. But
something for me that was quite important was having that psychologist that was specialized in eating disorders. And so first psychologist I saw, the first one when I was 18, I didn't realize this until a bit later, but she actually wasn't a eating disorder specialized psychologist. She was just a psychologist. But when my GP was like, do you have a preference? Would you prefer a male or a female? At that time, I was like, I think I'd feel a bit more comfortable with a female. And so she was sort of the only one in this area that could help, but didn't quite fully understand eating disorders. And so I think a lot of what I did say to this initial psychologist was almost a bit dismissed.
Yeah.
She almost did quite dismiss these behaviors and ways that I was thinking. Because she didn't have that knowledge or expertise in that area. And so that's something that's really important for me, finding someone who's not just a broad psychologist, but has more so those specific niche sort of pinpoint. That's not the right word. But
that is, I think it
expertise.
is. Yeah. I think they're propping up more and more these days. Like a lot more, both psychiatrists and psychologists are kind of specializing in different disorders, which I think is really good in some respects, but I think in others, like for me, with someone with such complex mental health conditions, sometimes can be a little bit like, it's been hard for me to find psychiatrists and psychologists that do what I need because so many of them are specialized now. But I do think it's good to know that, finding someone who is specialized in eating disorder recovery, because my psychologist is also an eating disorder specialist. That's why I started seeing her in the first place. She's been practicing for a very long time. But knowing that someone understands, particularly eating disorders, like for me, that was really important. Because the other stuff, like my other stuff, the mood disorders, all of that is like, okay, but at the time when I started seeing someone, I needed to know that the person I was seeing understood the complexity and the severity of eating disorders specifically. Yeah, specialized therapists, always good.
Yeah, and initially, I'm just going to sort of like go into like a new little conversation.
You're totally fine.
One of our little notes here, because I just was reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to.
Yeah, you go.
About the pressure to get better quickly. So when I was first seeing this initial psychologist, I knew that she wasn't really helping me, but I didn't want to leave because I knew then I'd be on a waiting list again. And so I just sort of stuck with it for a while, even though I wasn't getting anything from it, which is kind of silly because
it's also expensive.
Yeah, oh my gosh, expensive. Oh gosh. And so I stuck it out for a while, and the psychologist, I don't know, she was like, the whole place was kind of weird. It was like in like a bit of a sketchy suburb, and like we'd walk in and there was like these zebra statues and the receptionist was like, well, and I'm like, hello, and like it was the weirdest experience ever. And I feel like this first psychologist I had, she didn't really listen almost in a sense. She just, oh my gosh, it's sort of, looking back now, I'm like, it kind of makes me mad. She just kept trying to be like, if you buy my book and read more. And I'm like, Emma, I don't want to buy your book. But she just kept going on about like her book. She's like, oh, you can see this in my book. And then when I moved on to my next psychologist, because I was like, this place is kind of whack. The second psychologist that I did see was really good. And one day I walk in and she's like, Sharna, I'm moving back to England in a few months. And so that really impacted me. And I was like, okay, well, shit, I need to get better quickly. I need to finish up because I'm not going to be able to have this resource that's really helping me, that's, you know, close to home.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but I prefer in-person appointments. During COVID, I had a lot of online ones, but I don't know, something about...
I'm a big in-person person.
Yeah.
I like to be in person, which is so crazy because I only see my psych on telehealth. But I think I've been working with her for 5 years and she's really good. So I don't want to just be... I don't want to be like, oh, find a new psychologist just because I want to be in person.
So have you ever experienced anything like pressure to get better quickly? I mean, mine was sort of a time-related one because she was moving, but have you ever had anything like that?
So I mean, I'm a very impatient person. So I always am like, I just need to be better. I just need to get better. In my early days, my ex used to come in with my appointments. And so I felt if I wasn't doing or saying the right things in therapy appointments, in my treatment, that I was somehow like a failure for not getting it. And I think that really hindered my recovery, especially in my eating disorder, because it meant that I would go in these circles where I would be okay for a couple weeks because I could put up the facade for a couple weeks that I was better, that everything was fine, I was saying the right things, I was doing the right things, but then, you know, acting the right way, but then I wasn't really better. I wasn't really putting in the work. So after, you know, a couple weeks, I'd get so ill again. And so I lived in this cycle of just, I'm okay for a week or two, and then I'm really, really sick again because I wasn't actively doing the work. Whereas now, and I still feel a lot of pressure to get better quickly now, but, you know, I talk about it with my psych, and she reminds me that, you know, bipolar especially is a really hard thing to just get better immediately. Like, it's not, because it's based on chemical imbalances in the brain. Sometimes it's, you know, finding the right a lot of it is finding the right medication, doing the right types of therapy for me, and like all of these things, but all of that takes time. And she'll often say to me, like, you know, this could be another couple decades of work, which makes me so mad because I'm like, I don't want to be living like this for another couple decades. But something that reminds that I try to keep in the back of my mind is, look at all the progress I have made in the last year.
Yeah.
And even if it's not, I'm instantly better, even if it's not, I have come so far from the person who threw chairs in coffee shops, fucked up on God knows what. Like, I'm so different then. Like, that was 6 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm so different now, and even when I do have even when I have my psychotic episodes and things like that, and it's tough on me, but everyone around me, I'm not throwing chairs in coffee shops.
That's good. Don't throw chairs in coffee shops.
Don't throw chairs in coffee shops. But it's absolutely crazy to me to see how far I've come. And even if it is a few, like, I know that I'll make progress every day.
Yeah.
I know that everything that I do and everything that I say to other people is always, how can I be a better person today than I was yesterday? And I only have to get through the next 24 hours.
Exactly.
Right? And sometimes it is the next 24 minutes, it's never, like, sometimes just reminding myself that we just have to do that. And it's hard. And I think as well, like, the pressure to get better for me has always come from other people. Like, get better for other people and not necessarily for myself, although that it's this outside forces that is like why I want to just be better all of a sudden. But it's always a journey,
Absolutely.
Always a journey. And I really have, even in the last 12 months, like, I've come so far. I'm such a different person, and you are too. And you are too. Like, you've, like, the changes that I've seen in you in the last 12 months, and especially in finding your partner as well, because that's happened in the last 12 months, Sharna. I remember yes, yeah. But the changes even in the things we talk about, like, I remember, like, when I just moved back in with my parents and things like that, we were talking about this person who hadn't treated you very nice, and you were, like, really timid about it, and you were like, I don't know what to do. Now you kind of send us messages that are like, by the way, I sent this thing to this person, just filling you in, and I think you have especially grown a lot of confidence over the last year. And and it's not just you and I, but everyone in my life, I see them have changed and grown so much. And it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it kind of is, isn't it?
Yeah. Back on the therapy talk, what types of therapies have you tried?
Oh gosh. I guess I've done talk therapy, group therapy, art therapy. What are they? There are some abbreviation ones. I can never remember.
CBT, DBT.
I want to say one or both of them. I think I've done.
Yeah.
I've tried. Can't remember what they stand for. But
CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yep.
Cognitive behavioral therapy extended, I think is what the E stands for, is like the first line for eating disorder treatment. CBTE is called. Okay. DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy. It's more like there's, like, a lot of tips in there. One of the strategies is, like, it's like distress tolerance, emotional regulation, managing, I guess, emotional symptoms is more DBT. There's ACT therapy, which is I can't remember what ACT therapy stands for. Acceptance commitment therapy. It's about more kind of sitting with and accepting, not necessarily in a dismissive way, but in a, like, that's where I get my thanks Bob from, is ACT therapy. Like, just like, okay, I'm having these thoughts. Thanks Bob. Thanks, Bob. Listeners, is my self-criticism, in case I haven't said that before in another episode. And rather than trying to, so CBT and DBT are very much about changing the way that you are thinking or feeling. ACT therapy is a lot more about kind of accepting, sitting with it for a little bit, and then deciding if you're gonna, it's a lot about values. So then once you've kind of accepted, making a decision to act on something based on your values. Is it a way move? I've done a lot of therapy, if you could not tell by my rundown of all these therapies. There's also other types of therapies. I don't know any more that have acronyms, but other types of therapies in like, I'm pretty sure you've done this. Schema therapy.
Probably.
Yeah.
Like showing you something and you're like, that's
Yeah, schema therapy.
chart that I got from
Schema
my...
therapy is kind of like parts work from memory.
Yeah,
It's like the
yeah.
different parts of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've done so many different therapies. And I've also done, you know, sensory based therapy where you, like sensory management, talk therapy, trauma therapy. I did EMDR at one point, which stands for eye rapid movement EMDR. Desensitization therapy. And basically what it does is when you've got trauma, it's sitting in the amygdala and it basically helps you process it into long-term memories so that it's not causing as visceral reaction in you anymore. That was really cool. And I had like little buzzers in my hand that vibrated.
Oh my God.
And like flicked between and then watched like this little light flicker, and it helps you because when you go into REM state, your eyes flicker. And that's what processes short-term memories into long-term memories and moves it out of the amygdala. And so the purpose of this therapy is in a safe space. You talk through the trauma and what's happened, and they're basically stimulating the REM sleep cycle while you're awake, so that you can, while you're talking about it, it moves into long-term memory and therefore isn't in your amygdala causing the PTSD symptoms. It's really cool, and it was so helpful. It was incredibly helpful. Yeah, I've also done social adaptive therapy, which is like when I'm depressed, I do more social things instead of doing more social things when I'm manic, because it helps. It's supposed to help regulate my moods with like the way I interact with other people. That's really cool. I personally don't find CBT helpful and DBT helpful. But that's because of the conditions that I've got.
Yeah.
So some things in DBT were helpful. Like there's this one strategy called TIP, which is like applying it's like temperature intensive exercise. And I have no idea what the two P's stand for. But sometimes when I'm really anxious, I'll go and put an ice pack on the back of my head, and it just kind of helps regulate me a little bit.
Yeah.
CBT I did not find helpful at all because I already know that. I already know. I don't need to think through whether or not my thoughts are accurate or, you know, all of that. I just don't need that. But it's finding the right therapy. I always advise, like, some things aren't going to work, but I always advise, in my non-professional opinion, to try as many different types of therapies as you can, because you never know. There's so many different types of therapies. I know art therapy and group therapy can be especially good for neurodivergent folks, especially if you're in a setting like more creative outlets and things like that. Maybe I'll post on our Instagram my wall of all my art from therapy.
Oh, yes, I love that.
Yeah, because I have so many collages that I've done as part of my therapy that just sit on my wall now. But yeah, what kind of therapy have you found the most helpful, do you think?
Ooh, I think probably for me, CBT.
Yeah.
Or DBT. I don't actually know which one I've done. But with my current psychologist, it's really good because she'll I feel like with my previous psychologists, they just sort of listened and yeah, that was nice. But with this psychologist, she'll sort of explain the process of what's going on and explain it almost in a scientific way, I guess, how you were saying before with the schema. I did a bit of work on that and just breaking down parts of what's going on. And I think, I don't know if that's because I'm quite a scientific person or what, but really sort of understanding these different types of, what I'm looking for, I guess, methods, I want to say, and ways of thinking. I've also really quite enjoyed group art therapy, which also how we met.
Yeah.
So that's a little bonus. Because once again, I'm also quite a creative person, and the thing I like about group art therapy is when you're in group therapy, just standard group therapy, you're just talking about, the issue, whereas in the art therapy, it's not really talked about it, but it's sort of acknowledged that everyone has this shared common experience, but we're so much more than that, and that's what I really like about the group where we met.
Yeah.
Because it was therapeutic, but it wasn't, I guess, the standard type of therapy.
One thing I do want to kind of say on my therapy journey is something that was insanely helpful for me was when I split it up.
Yeah.
When I split all of my diagnoses up and started seeing people for specific reasons, really helped me.
Yeah.
Because when I was working with just my psychologist and we were doing everything together, all we did was crisis management.
Yeah.
And all we did was put out fires. But when I started seeing a specific therapist for my trauma, for my eating disorder, for the LGBTQ plus issues that I was having.
Your ADHD.
My ADHD, you know, when I split it up, and this isn't going to work for everyone, and don't get me wrong, with my current psychologist, we still talk about the overlap in all of this because there are overlaps in all of these conditions. But knowing that I had a specific focus with a certain therapist was really helpful, and I think is what really moved me into a stronger place of recovery because I wasn't just in survival mode anymore. I could actually put the work in. I could do, you know, the EMDR therapy with the trauma counselor. I could, you know, in the place that we met, they offer a lot of different groups. And so my eating disorder was really covered. And I think that really was foundational for me. And also getting homework that I could take home and do at home because I'm a big fan of therapy homework. If you are listening and you think you're in crisis mode or survival mode, maybe, and you do have lots of issues, maybe that could be something you could try. I'm not a therapist or a expert in any way, but I just know that it helped for me. Whereas I think with you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's more about really that relationship you've got with that one person and getting that kind of scientific approach to therapy has been really helpful for you. And maybe that's something that would work because, you know, it's going to work differently for everyone.
Exactly.
I don't think there's anything else I wanted to cover. Anything else you wanted to cover?
No, maybe just, I think it would be good just to touch on, you know, I guess, how can I phrase this? I can always never find the words that I'm looking at. There's like a bunch of words floating around in my head and I have to like grab them to form a sentence. Any words or thoughts for someone thinking about trying therapy or maybe wanting to see a different therapist?
What would I tell someone going back into therapy or that's a loaded question, Sharna.
Yeah, it
I
kind of
think
is.
just know that one, you're not going to get along with everyone. If you do need to see a different one, your healing and your recovery journey is more important than whether or not you get on with someone. Everyone I've met is a professional, and anytime I've had to break up with a therapist, it's been no hard feelings. You know, that's just my experience, of course. So, you know, you never know who you're going to get, but I'd like to hope that at least therapists have like that professional bounds. If you're giving therapy a go for the first time, I think it's also important to just remember that. Like, it might take a few times. Like, it took me years to find someone that worked, and then another few years to even be comfortable enough to open about things with them. So it just takes time. I think that's the only advice that I've got is it takes time.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't add much to what you said, you know. Each therapist, you have to have that good relationship with your therapist, and you know exactly what you said. They don't care if you want to see someone else. They want what's best for you. I think when I was, I guess, still sort of waiting for my first therapist, because wait lists are terrible. And I guess if you're thinking about trying therapy and getting like a regular therapist, I know in the past I have used a few like the hotline services.
Hotlines are really good.
Butterfly Foundation. And that can, I mean, depending on when you call, there can be a bit of a wait. But they'll normally have like on their website when peak call times are. But just even if you give like one of these services a call, that can give you sort of almost like what to expect when if you see like a regular therapist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'll put the numbers are on our website. We've got Australia and US numbers. But I will also put the Australian numbers in this video in the description and on the screen now. Because that's a good point. If you're on a wait list and you do need help, there are support numbers that can help you. You know, Lifeline, Butterfly Foundation, Kids Helpline, depending on how old you are. I know Headspace has got one. There's so many numbers. And of course, if you're in an emergency and you need help now, call 000. At least in Queensland, if you call 000 for mental health, the paramedics can sometimes bring a mental health professional with them. Okay. It doesn't happen every time, and you may still have to go to the hospital, but sometimes they will bring, in my experience, they've brought a mental health person with them if they have capacity to do so, which I think is an amazing service, at least here in Queensland. I don't know about other states and other countries, unfortunately. But I will put all these numbers in, and also reach out to your friends and family as well and let them know. That was good. Good note, Sharna.
Yeah, thank you. So let's do a little rundown. So therapy can be life-changing, but it can also be very frustrating, confronting, or, weird. And, as I mentioned before, and if you ever feel like you're doing it wrong because it didn't work the right way, we really hope this episode reminded you that healing is not a linear process, and support should always fit for you.
There is no gold star for sticking with a therapist who doesn't get you, and it is okay to shop around, to pause, to change directions. What matters is that you feel safe, you feel seen, and you feel respected, not that you feel fixed. As always, if something in this episode resonated with you, you can always reach out to us on our socials. You can find us on Instagram at halfway to healing with underscores underneath, although the link is also in the description. We love hearing what stood out for you and where you're at in your journey. And don't forget to subscribe, like, or share the podcast with someone who you think might need it or might just want to listen to us ramble on every week. Word of mouth will help us reach more people who are walking this halfway healing path too.
So next week we are talking about mental health in the workplace, from burnout and disclosure to navigating work while chronically ill or neurodivergent. It's going to be a big one. We've got some stories to tell. Thank you very much for being here. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time. Have a good week.